Alright guys, Tactical here back again today. I believe today is Saturday. It's an interesting time after Christmas when every day feels like a Sunday. Who really knows what's going on? But the new year, the new decade is very closely approaching. Got a couple of video ideas prepared for that. Today I might touch on that a little bit in the latter half of the video. But today I mostly wanted to focus on this tweet from Killer to Slasher yesterday and a kind of the incitement towards, silent footsteps as a topic for discussion, but also the potential for professional players to be a part of the developer team, or at least maybe retired professional players to be a part of the dev team to give direction on what the competitive side of the community will look like, whether that's a thing that Activision will decide to include or at least think about going forwards, to have an individual who has been playing professional Call of Duty for a long time to be relaying and related to, at least very closely, to the developer teams for the Call of Duty to make sure the game is in the best possible state, especially given we have a franchise league now with a $25 million plus buy-in for each team. So that's what I wanted to discuss today. Like, if you guys enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always. Thanks for the new subscribers on yesterday's video. I mentioned that YouTube had deactivated. They like to say that they've removed inactive accounts from subscribing, but sometimes maybe they subscribe people that are actually active followers. Don't fully trust it. But yeah, thanks a lot for that. Let's hop right into it here. So this is the tweet. Slasher says, all I wanted for Christmas was silent footsteps in Modern Warfare, maybe next year. And I like this little thumbs up thing that the pros are continuing with. Kind of a sarcastic remark they're making regarding the current state of competitive play in Modern Warfare. And Killer says, why don't you quit COD and just join the developer team at this point, since you know exactly what COD needs? Slasher just says no, because of course Killer spells it wrong. But very interesting idea, I guess. It's something we've talked about for a while. Of course, realistically, there's no reason for Slasher to ever quit Call of Duty. Right now, he's at the peak of his performance, right? Just won his first MVP at Anaheim last season, was on pretty much the dominant team for the year in 100 Thieves. I guess you could say United, actually, given the latter half of the season. But whatever. Obviously, a fantastic player. Was one of the best players. Like, you could say he was the best player over the last 3 years in terms of assault rifle play. Maybe you could say Octane. Formal, of course, is up there for conversation, but a lot of big names. Slasher's right up there at the peak of his powers right now, especially since he finished his degree in robotic engineering, which I'm sure some of you guys didn't know. He was working on his degree while he won the world championship back in Black Ops 3. So a fantastic player. Of course, no reason for him to join the developer team or whatever, even if they had an opportunity open. But if they did have an opportunity open, who would be the guy that would go over there? Because a lot of individuals, of course, the likes of Parasite, right, comes to mind. Maybe Parasite, he wants to compete, right? He wants to prove he can still be a valuable player. He's playing in the amateur side of the season for this upcoming season, right? So he's going to be playing in the amateur tournaments. Got a team ready to go to the Minnesota event on January the 24th to the 26th as the opening weekend of the season. In his position, he would have to be offered quite a lot of money, I would say, for him to say, okay, fair enough, I'm going to hang up the sticks. I'm going to go work with the developer team and be the relay guy between Activision and the developers for that Call of Duty to make sure the game is in a good competitive state. Now, of course, that's a difficult role to have because the developers and Activision have to focus mainly on the casual community, and something that a lot of you guys might not want to hear, and definitely it's not ideal from my perspective, but I know a fair few people who play Call of Duty Modern Warfare, they like the game. The people who are going to be vocally talking out against the game, it's always the minority, right? The people who enjoy the game, they just sit back, they log on, they play the game in their spare time, right? I think on the whole, Infinity Ward seems to have been a pretty good job in appealing to the casual scene, and some people actually genuinely enjoy this game quite a lot. I personally find that pretty remarkable, but I guess that's what it is, and maybe that's something they've learned, right, with skill-based matchmaking and all of these things. Maybe it does improve the overall enjoyment for, the most of the players. I hope that's not the case. I don't think that is the case, but, maybe that's what the developers think, right? So that's obviously their main focus. I wish we could go back to a time of Black Ops 2 where it seemed, to my perspective, that casual players, competitive players were both loving this side of things. That doesn't seem to be the case today, right? But it is what it is. So of course, Activision have to appeal to their 95% of the player base, which is guys that, guys and girls that play the game pretty casually on an evening or a weekend. They hop on for half an hour, they play some TDM, and then they hop off again to do whatever the hell they're meant to do, right? They've got to do with their evening. That's the majority of the player base. Us guys that like playing competitive stuff, obviously we're on a back foot. So this would be a difficult role to undertake in terms of relaying between Activision and Infinity Ward when they definitely have other focuses. But right now it really does seem like there isn't much communication between what Activision want to be a proper prime competitive Call of Duty that people are going to want to enjoy watching and also will be competitive, and Infinity Ward who not really seem to be focusing on that aspect too much, given the hardpoint wasn't even in the game at launch. I don't think the spawns are still a mess. Dead Silent situation is a bad one, and that's really what I wanted to go on to next. So which guys do you think would be a good fit for this kind of role? Of course, Parasite is a guy who comes to mind, but other individuals that aren't necessarily in the league, for example, it depends on the money, right? Because if you're a guy like JCap, you're probably making a hell of a lot of money over at OpTic Gaming Los Angeles. If this happens to be the season where, you know, you decide to hang up the sticks, you just can't compete anymore, that could be a legitimate role. But then again, if you're a JCap, potentially coaching, potentially in a management staff, you know, it's very difficult for you to necessarily want to say that you're going to be the man on the own, and it's a pretty difficult role, I would say, to be relaying in terms of that. But I'm pretty sure any competitive player would have a very good idea of what the game needs to have in terms of a competitive scene. Guys that play competitive for a long time, guys who are relatively new to the scene, they all have a very good idea of what the game needs at a fundamental level to make it enjoyable to watch and to play, of course, and a competitive game at that. I do think that there's some individuals, especially the older individuals in the community, that are probably better placed for these kind of things. So yeah, if you're 24, 25, you play Call of Duty for a very long time, you're really going to know what you want, and your own individual biases won't play into it too much. Whereas an individual like, say, an Envoy who's just played for one season, he may very well like to have the game set up exactly like Black Ops 4. For example, if you're a JCab who's played the game since Black Ops 1 and even before that all the way to now, you're probably going to be in a better situation to do that. But then again, even the average guy on the r/COD competitive Reddit is probably going to do a better job in orchestrating and deciding what the competitive community should have than the developers are in the current state, because their focuses are clearly elsewhere. So moving on from that, I really wanted to talk about Silent Footsteps as a concept. Slasher here quite clearly says, all I wanted for Christmas was Silent Footsteps in Modern Warfare, maybe next year. And I find it very interesting because I tended to find that the Call of Duties I've enjoyed most have pretty damn silent footsteps, like Black Ops 3, Ghosts, for example. Now, of course, Black Ops 3 was a little bit different because you had the wall running where you made noise even if you had silence, and the jumping, you had to have blast suppressor, and even then it made a slight bit of noise, but running around normally made no noise at all. As it was in Ghosts, as it was pretty much in Black Ops 2, as it was in Advanced Warfare, but you had to pop exo mute, so that wasn't ideal. But in these games where they have had silent footsteps, honestly, I think it works really well for Search and Destroy. And I think this is interesting because I'm going to make a comparison to Counter-Strike, which a lot of people don't like it when I do, but at the same time, Counter-Strike is pretty much undeniably the best FPS, I think, of the decade, especially from a competitive standpoint. And the interesting part about Counter-Strike is that if you walk, you make no noise at all, which is absolutely how I think it should be. In Modern Warfare, I find it incredibly frustrating that if you crouch walking even, you still make noise. Walking, aim down sights, walking, trying not to make noise, you still make noise. That is pathetic. I think Search and Destroy play is really frustrating right now, where you effectively just have to sit around, wait for your dead silence to come up, then you can make a play. In Counter-Strike, you can just walk around. Yes, you're relatively slow, but at least you know you're silent. When you sprint, however, you walk normally. Yes, then in that case, you do make noise in Counter-Strike, and you can be heard from a pretty decent distance away. And that's a very interesting feature, and I think the reason why this is necessary in Counter-Strike, to be honest, is the way the maps are designed. The maps are very big and they're very widespread. It's very long rotations if you're a defender to get all the way from a B bomb site to an A bomb site on average. Therefore, if you're an A bomb site defender, if they are rushing your bomb site, you need to have that audio cue so you can call to your team to rotate earlier. I think that's a pretty big deal. If there were no footsteps at all, 5 terrorists could just collapse on a site with no audio clues at all for the counter-terrorists, and the counter-terrorists would get absolutely demolished. In Call of Duty, I don't think that's so necessary due to the map design. It tends to be more traditional 3-lane in general. However, that's not the case in Modern Warfare, and it's a very interesting determination the way the maps work. In Modern Warfare, though, I think the fact that you can't even crouch, you can't even walk without making noise, it makes it pretty awful. At the same time, in Counter-Strike, it can be quite difficult to determine how close the enemies are to your bomb site, right? In Call of Duty, the way the bomb sites tend to be designed is you can defend a site and you can see quite a long distance away where the enemies are, and because you can't get killed in one shot in Call of Duty unless it's a sniper, you can shoulder peek, you can get some info, and you can probably see the enemies before you can actually hear their footsteps, right? In Call of Duty, the way the maps are typically designed, if you think of some of the best maps, Raid, Standoff, if you're defending A, you can play from the cutout position on Black Ops 2 Raid, you can see them coming into the A site, you can peek, shoulder peek mid, and you can get info without needing the sound cues. However, in Counter-Strike, on a map like Mirage, you can't really get those sound cues, you can't really get the visual clues because it's very difficult to determine where the enemies are unless you push for map control into terrorist territory, as it were. Therefore, I think the audio cues are necessary. In Call of Duty, I don't think they are as necessary. And from my personal experience, I've enjoyed Call of Duty much more when we've had silent footsteps, when you can make plays flanking around the side, and you don't have to wait for dead silence like exomute or dead silence in this game to be built up. In my position, I do think that silent footsteps, they should definitely be silent for walking, aim down sights, walking, crouch, walking 100%. When you're sprinting, you know, maybe a bit of a grey area. When you're double sprinting, I do think it should make noise because you should have to pay some sacrifice for moving at that speed. That's my personal opinion. If everything was completely silent, I think that may be a little bit over the top, especially given the map design. But, you know, who knows? If you, for example, if you want to make a really quick play running straight down the middle of the map, if you're using double sprint, I think that should be potential to be heard by a counter-terrorist. You should be able to be prepared to turn around and kill you if you're going to be moving at that pace. That's my opinion. Your guys' thoughts may differ in the comment section below. So just to finish with then the best Call of Duty player of 2019. In the coming days, I want to discuss best COD of the decade, best Call of Duty player of the decade, given we're coming up to 2020, right? But this is a tweet that came out from Deserto, best Call of Duty player of 2019. And maybe I looked at it before, but Dashi, Octane, and Zimp were the top three. Be interested to hear your thoughts on this as well, if you haven't commented down below yet, because this is a very interesting tweet in my opinion. And personally very interesting to see Dashi 1. I think that these are clearly the top 3 in my opinion. I think Abizi is an interesting pick for top 4. Maybe some other players that could go in this 4th position instead. But Octane, Simp and Dashi I think are the pretty clear top 3. Dashi was definitely dominant for the first half of the year, right? Like, this guy was on another level, especially when OpTic won their first championship. But he continued his great form pretty much through the entire year. I think Dashi undoubtedly in the top 3 somewhere. Simp is an interesting one though, right? Because he came on the scene as a rookie, dominated the latter half of the year on that United squad, won the World Championship, won the final playoffs, right? And obviously a huge impact player on the squad when they switched him out for JCap and they made that alteration earlier in the year. So Simp and Dashi definitely up there for me. Octane is an honourable mention. In my opinion, when I made the video, I think top 10 players of the year, I was honestly tempted, and I think I did in that video, put Octane first in my rankings. Definitely a controversial one, but in my opinion, Octane with the ICR, no other player with the ICR that season was anywhere near as dominant as Octane was. He was consistently going off. No one else could get close with that weapon, like Simp obviously with the Sorg and Dashi with the Maddox, both very powerful weapons. The ICR was not as good by any means, and there was really no one else who could get close to Octane's level throughout that season. He was dominant throughout it, from start to finish. The 100 Thieves squad he was super influential in, and given Simp was only there the latter half of the year, I think that Octane probably pips out Dashi over the entirety of the year. The real question for me is, was Simp good enough, even in that relatively short period of time? Is there recency bias that gives Simp the edge over Octane in my mind? But Dashi wins it on this Deserto poll. Interested to hear your thoughts down below. Thanks for watching as always. Like if you guys enjoyed, subscribe if you're new. I will see you next time.